Guys, I'm back with my partner in crime. How you doing today, Dylan?
I'm good. It's great to be back. Long time.
Congratulations on your second job um,
I
from
appreciate that.
teacher Olive, Mr. Olive.
Yes.
Um,
Yes,
my
sir. I'm
first
very excited.
question: I see a lot of negativity going on on social media. I posted my early prediction of 10-2, and I see people saying you're crazy, you're out of your mind. He's a carbon copy of Mr. Napier, and I'm like scratching my head, and I'm like, carbon copy of Napier when he got interviewed by Werfel and he got interviewed by Coach Meyer, and they didn't say anything about carbon copy. Why do you think the fan base is so negative?
Yeah, I think, when you've been hurt before, obviously you're gonna be a little more hard to trust another coach. I also think, initially when we hired him, that was the big talk is a G5 guy who did well in the G5, but we don't trust that anymore because we thought Billy was going to be the next big thing, and he didn't turn out that way. So I think there's a lot of people that have been hurt. I've been hurt before too. I mean, every time I'm going to say something about this roster, I have to kind of remind myself like we thought the roster was really good last year too, and you got to remember the coaching aspect of it. But I think it's a completely different program than it was a year ago. I know it's been a very quick turnaround, but it's a completely different program. The coaching staff is a complete 180. I mean, if you're gonna sit here and say that these two have had the same approach, that's just far from the case. I don't think Billy Napier brought in anyone as talented as Buster Faulkner to call plays, anyone as talented as Phil Troutwine to coach the O line. I think there's a lot of good hires that Billy didn't really do. He didn't do in his first year. He didn't do in his last year. He didn't do in any year. That was a big gripe with Billy Napier, and arguably one of the reasons it went haywire there at the end. But I think at the end of the day, people are going to be negative when you're coming off a 4-8 season. It's hard to be like, hey, listen, we're going for a college football playoff when you didn't even make a bowl game last year, right? But I think it's just people are not going to be able to trust you until you give them something to trust. I think once the games get played and we start seeing some wins, hopefully, then people will be a lot more excited and a lot more trustworthy.
Are you? Would you say he's urban-esque Steve Spurrier, and he's won the offseason per se, or are we jumping the gun because he's got a top seven class as it stands right now?
Yeah, I think, I'm not going to put him up there with some of the greats that we've had so far just because, I think number one, that's setting him up for failure. If you say, hey, like this guy's going to be the next best thing, obviously we're going to have high expectations, but I'm not going to put him up there with Herb yet. I'm not going to put up there with Steve Spurrier, but he's definitely won the offseason. At least, just in our circle of, Gators, he's definitely won the offseason. I think he's won a lot of people over. The recruiting class has been awesome to watch build. I think there's a lot of, potential playmakers in that room. I think a lot of difference makers that are going to get to campus and kind of, help transform this program. And, I think we go back to the offseason when we talked about, some of the transfer stuff that was going on. I think a really good transfer class, even after before the spring, it was a good transfer class. After the spring, it looks a lot better, I think. There's a couple players that have really just improved their stock a lot. Just names that come to mind, obviously Micah Mays, Bailey Stockton, Eric Singleton, that wide receiver room is just stacked with exciting transfers. I think, on the defensive side, Emmanuel Oibendejo, I always mess
Yeah,
up that name, but
yeah.
he looked really good this spring. I think we're excited to see where he goes. Some of the offensive line guys, there's just it felt like he really did well in the transfer portal, and we got to see this spring that like it was better than we thought, right? There's some guys that might be breaking out, and this could be big years for them. So I think he definitely won the offseason. I think you can tell by just the buy-in around the program. There's still some negative people, but I think majoritively people are pretty bought in. People are pretty excited. Now, does that mean we're predicting 10-2 like you are. I think you're a little higher on the program than some people, but I do think that there's a good buy-in because he really did a lot of good things this offseason.
My that's my highest. My lowest is 8-4. I don't see a 6-6 season like many people are because they saw it on ESPN or a lot of the other media. I don't see a 6-6 season simply because he's got more energy than the previous regime because he's gonna chew out somebody on the sidelines before we even know it. Like people
Yeah,
people
yeah.
people are saying we're gonna lose to Auburn when he beat USF with less talent.
Yeah, I think that Auburn game's going to be a big one to really see if we have the guy. I think obviously it's a be like, hey, this on a guy. I do think if Jon Sumrall is the coach, a lot of people think he is. I think that's a very winnable game, and I'm excited for that one for sure.
Any thoughts on another negative? Well, another thing people are seeing negatively. I don't see it negatively because Steve Spurrier used it, Urban Meyer used it, a two quarterback system. Um, he's saying we're going to see two quarterbacks at the beginning of the year. I don't see it as a negative thing. What are your thoughts on it? Or do you think we'll have a starter by week 1, week 2, week 3, for that matter?
Yeah, I think, I'm not too sure if they're going to have a starter. I think Jon Sumrall is very chill with his quarterbacks in a way that he's not going to be rushed to make a decision. We've seen it in the past. He loves to bring up Darian Mensah, a guy who not anyone really thought was going to start at Tulane when he did and came in and we see where he's at now. Even, last year at Tulane, Jake Retzloff was at BYU until very late into the cycle, had a little bit of, a strange departure there, and then comes over and starts at Tulane. So I think, the quarterback room, it might come down to who's looking the best in the first couple of games. It might come down to we're going to name this guy the starter, but he's not going to stay the starter if he's not balling out. I do think we're going to see two quarterbacks the first couple of games just because why wouldn't you? I think even if you think that Aaron Philo won the job or Tramel Jones won the job, you're going to be playing two or three teams that you should be beating pretty well, and you should have time to put in both quarterbacks. Now, and that's not me saying I think it's going to be Aaron Philo drive one, Tramel Jones drive two, or in reversing each player comes in for one drive, right? I don't think it's going to be that per se, but I think we might even see Will Griffin. We might see a lot of quarterbacks in the first couple of weeks if it goes as planned. I think, I think they're going to want to put their foot on the gas a little bit and kind of blow some teams out here early. But yeah, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think a lot of people have taken this quarterback competition and kind of decided that it needs to be one side. Like, if I like Tramel, then I have to be against Aaron Philo. And if I like Philo, I have to be against Tramel. And that's really not the case. Both these guys are, from all accounts, good football players, right? Like they both have, high potential. I think they both have shown flashes that they can be really good. That doesn't mean, if I'm going to come out here and say, listen, I think Aaron Philo is going to start week 1, that doesn't mean I'm saying, oh, Tramel Jones sucks, right? I'm not saying, oh, Tramel Jones is a not good quarterback. I think that's where there's kind of a misconception in the fan base where it's like, I have to pick one or the other. We can just be excited about whoever is going to take the reins. And I think from all accounts, both quarterbacks have looked good. From what I've seen, both quarterbacks have looked good. So I really don't think, people love to say that if you have two quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. And I
Yeah.
get that, obviously it's better to have one main guy. But at the same time, would you really be excited if Aaron Philo came in? He had little to no experience, and Jon Sumrall was just like, yeah, Aaron Philo's our starter. And that's that. Like, I think people would be complaining about, like, they didn't give Tramel a good enough chance. And I think the same would be said if they said Tramel's our starter, and this guy's a redshirt freshman who played in 2 games last year. They're both blowouts, right? So I think people, they're always going to find something where they don't like. They're going to complain about it. But at the end of the day, I think both these guys are good quarterbacks, have the potential to be great quarterbacks. And this fall, we'll probably see a little separation is my guess before game 1. And then by Auburn, I'm expecting that we have a pretty solid
You
that
froze.
doesn't mean it won't change, if something happens, but I'm going to see, down for sure.
Would you say we have two RB2s and RB1? Because to me, I thought it was going to be prior RB2, but it seems like we have two RB2s.
Yeah, definitely. I think that was one of the biggest things from spring for me was, I expected Evan Pryor to be one of the best backup running backs in the entire country. Super explosive guy, super talented guy, productive at Cincinnati. And then you come in and you start hearing about Duke Clark, Duke Clark, Duke Clark, right? And it's pretty eye-opening when you expect, the transfer to be the solidified number 2 guy, but I think Duke Clark made a real push. And like you said, I do think there might be 2 running back 2s. Buster Faulkner loves his running back committee. I wrote an article about it. He uses
Yes.
a ton of running backs. 3 or 4 running backs at a time can be productive in Buster Faulkner's offense. And I do think that we see Jaden Ball as the
You froze, buddy.
workhorse RB1. Oh, am I back?
Yeah. I don't. Well, you keep freezing every now and then. I see you. Talk.
No. Is it
No,
working
you're
now?
breaking up. You're breaking up.
Oh man. All right, let me leave. Let me back. Let's see.
You can leave and come back if you want.
Yeah. I'll do that real quick.
Give me a second, guys. Dylan's gonna be back in a bit. Give me a second.
How we looking? We looking good?
Now you're looking better.
Sorry about that.
So
Listen.
let's go back to the RB2s because you were talking about that when you froze.
Yeah, for sure. Back to what I was saying. I do think that both of them are going to have an impact. If I had to guess, I really do think that Duke Clark is more of the Jaden Ball replacement. I think when Jaden Broad needs a break, that's when you're going to see Duke Clark. I think, God forbid, Jaden Ball is a lot
You're
more.
breaking up again, buddy.
I think Evan Pryor's. Oh, man. This is not good. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, but I don't know if it's that. Is this your normal room you normally record at?
No, I moved, so I'm having some Wi-Fi. It's probably what it is. New Wi-Fi.
You moved. Okay, I thought it was the same house.
Yeah. No. So that's my. I think it's. I'll try to get through it. I don't know how to fix it, but
that's fine. It just you keep breaking up every
is it?
now and then. I can hear you,
Oh
but
man!
sometimes you freeze. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes you break up.
Just let me know because I don't really know. I might switch to the phone if that might work better.
Okay.
But yeah, back to what I was saying again. Sorry.
Yeah.
Technical difficulties, but I do think that Evan Pryor is going to be the RB2 in the fact that I think he's going to get the second most carries on the team. I think he's going to be, kind of that change of pace back. And then I think Duke Clark is kind of the Jaden Ball replacement. But I think both of them have a very serious role in this offense, and both of them are very good football players.
And what would you say people are worried about the offensive line? I haven't said this publicly, but I feel like Coach Sumrall has the Avengers of a staff in terms of the SEC. I think we can be competing for a championship. it might be the Gator in me, but I've said this before and I'll say it again. He reminds me of Steve Spurrier. He reminds me of Urban Meyer. I don't see a 6-6 season. The bottom for me is 8-4. The top for me is 10-2, maybe 11-1 if we get lucky. Um, should the fans be worried about the offensive line?
Yeah, I think, like you said, I don't see a world where this team totally, blows up like we saw last year. But I do think that if this team underachieves, I think it does come down to the offensive line. I think there's some real concerns with the offensive line. If you ask me what is the one position that you're the least confident in, it's that offensive line. Now, do I think there's some players that could step up this year and make that offensive line really, really serviceable and even good? Yeah, I think so. I think Emeka Ugorji had a really good spring. I think a lot of people are harsh on him because he started as a true freshman at Stanford. Listen, we like to joke about the ACC and the competitiveness in that conference, but it's hard to start as a true freshman anywhere. Starting in a Power Four conference is impressive enough. So I'm excited about him. But yeah, I think the offensive line, watching the spring game back, I kind of came away with like every time I'd watch, I'd be like, wow, this edge guy looks really good. Like Jaden Woods looks really good. Kofi Asari looks really good. KJ Ford looks really good. LJ McRae looks really good. And as those add up, you're kind of like, how much of it is these guys are really good, which I think a couple of them can be really good, but how much of it is also, the offensive line struggling. So, I think that's the biggest question mark. But that being said, I think if I know anything about Buster Faulkner, it's he's going to work around his weaknesses and, he's going to find ways to kind of hide those weaknesses. And I think that's why the offense is so exciting this year. I think we're going to see, an offensive coordinator that can hide your weaknesses and can make them into strengths in a way. I do think that, Buster Faulkner is going to have whatever quarterback it is. Now, in my personal opinion, and I've said this before, I think it's going to be Aaron Philo. And the reason I think it's going to be Aaron Philo is partially because of this. I think Buster Faulkner is going to want the quarterbacks to get the ball out fast. I think we're going to see, obviously we're going to see a lot of screens, which he's really good at. We're going to see a lot of the quick game, which Buster Faulkner can really cook up. So I do think that offensive line is worrisome, but I also have enough faith in Buster Faulkner and also Phil Troutwine where I'm not too worried about it.
Another reason why I think Jon Sumrall is going to be successful, and the fan base, a lot of the fan base doesn't understand this. If he wasn't going to be the Florida coach, he more than likely was going to be the Auburn coach. So it's not a shock to me he chose Florida, but his wife is an Auburn grad, or should I call it USF Auburn now, because the whole staff from USF pretty much moved over to Auburn. So I
Yep.
mean, guys, you guys are afraid of USF Auburn. I'm not. Is it going to be a good game? Yes, it is, because they're both in year one. But he beat USF with Tulane.
Mhm.
Any thoughts on a breakout player from the defense? And give me some thoughts on the first three games. I know we're going to have our weekly show. Hopefully, I know your schedule's kind of, but I'll work around your schedule even if we have to do it at night. It doesn't matter to me. I did it last season. We'll do it again. Um, so give me your early thoughts, not on the first two games, because the first two games they're already put it in the bag. We're 2-0 when we go to Auburn. What are some early keys to the game when we go to USF Auburn for Jon Sumrall, be it Aaron Philo or TJ and Ball and the rest of the gang to defeat USF Auburn?
Yeah, I think the biggest concern for me in that game is just going on the road in the SEC is always going to be difficult. Obviously, Auburn has a really live stadium. It's going to be a great atmosphere. They're bought in with their coach. Now we'll see what happens week one, Baylor Auburn. If maybe Baylor gets the upset there, DJ Lagway helps us out a little. I think, that might temper expectations on their side, but I'm fully expecting both these guys to come in with basically their whole season on the line in a way where it's like, if we beat Auburn, I mean, the season could really get interesting real fast. I think there's a world where we get to those 9 or 10 wins, or maybe even more if it starts rolling. You get a lot of momentum if you win that game. First SEC game, everyone kind of buys into, like, listen, I think everyone's going to have confidence coming into the year, but Jon Sumrall said it himself. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. You know what I mean? So first SEC game of the year, you're going to get punched in the face. Even if you win, you're going to kind of get, into the battle. And I think if you win that football game, your season's going to look a lot different than if you lose it. So yeah, I think really it's just about, can the team be, ready for that environment? Like you said, I'm pretty confident in just the fact that you look at the two kind of the two ways that these rosters were built. I think Auburn really, they have some really strong players returning. They added some players, but a lot of their additions were USF players, which might work out. I mean, he had success at USF with these players, but it wasn't the success where it's like, wow, these guys are like gonna push for a national championship at Auburn in the SEC. It was more, they didn't even win their conference, so I wouldn't say it's too much of like these guys are world beaters in a way. I think everyone likes to point at USF came into the swamp and beat the Florida Gators. The Florida Gators beat themselves that game. I don't think
We
that's
said that a
really
thousand times
crazy
on
to
our
say.
show.
Yeah, right. Like, I think that game was a very big fluke, and kind of, I don't think you could really go off that game as saying like, oh, Alex Golesh is going to work somewhere because he beat Florida in the swamp with USF. That was a really ugly game on both sides of the ball. USF really scored 16 points, wasn't really moving the ball too much. Florida gave them, if you remember the last drive, I mean, it was penalty after penalty. There was a tons of mistakes on Florida's side, but getting past that, I do think it's just, can Florida come out and be prepared for the atmosphere? Handling Byram Brown. I mess up that name all the time too. Byram Brown. We saw it last year. He had some explosive runs. That was the big thing, is he had some explosive runs. Can you stop that? Can you have your two defenders not run into each other on a deep shot? If you remember, that's how
Yes,
USF scored that big touchdown, was
yes.
really should not have been even close to a completion, and they ran into each other. So can you stop the explosive plays? Can you kind of get, it's going to be Byron Brown's first real SEC battle in a way. He played against Florida, but this is his first year in the SEC. I think he's a really talented football player, but can you kind of get him out of his groove? Can you kind of make him uncomfortable? And I think Brad White, has a lot in his bag to do that. So I'm really excited for that game. I think Florida has a real shot at winning that game. It's just about, can you get comfortable in an environment? Can the offense kind of get going? And can the defense hold it down until the offense gets going? I think that's a big thing, is like, Buster Faulkner's probably going to adjust and he's probably going to get his offense going. But if it doesn't happen in the first half, if it doesn't happen in the first 3 quarters, can Florida's defense keep it very competitive, kind of keep us in a dogfight until Buster Faulkner figures it out? And I think that's the biggest key right there, is, can we just, if things aren't going our way, it's obviously going to be the first SEC game. You're probably not going to be at your best in that game. You probably shouldn't be anyways. Can these guys just find a way to win? And I think that's what good programs do. And I think that would be a big test for Jon Sumrall.
Who should be, or who do you think will be our starting wide receivers? I believe we're 9 deep, but that's just my opinion. So I
I'll give
mean,
you I'll give you 11, Carlos. I'll give you 11 deep. I think that's what it is. But
okay,
I think the wide receiver room is extremely talented. I think there's tons of guys in there. Just starting 3 wise, I think it's pretty clear. I think Eric Singleton, in my opinion, is going to be the leading receiver for this football team.
correct.
Back with Buster Faulkner, really good football player, has a chance to improve on his draft stock. The reason why he's here is because his draft stock wasn't where he wanted it to be. I think he's going to do everything in his power to improve that draft stock under Faulkner. And then you got VB3 and Dallas Wilson, the two exciting freshmen from last year. I think they're going to be really good. Dallas is healthy now, which is really exciting. I think we haven't even seen, you know, we haven't touched the surface with Dallas Wilson yet. I think he's going to be an extremely good football player, has a chance to really be one of those superstars of college football. The build, the athleticism, the talent, I think it's all there. And then you go deeper in that room. I think Micah Mays and Bailey Stockton are going to have real impacts. I think those are your fourth and fifth guys, but they're going to see the field a lot. I think TJ Abrams is a guy we kind of sleep on in a way because, he's a returning guy.
Correct.
He didn't, make that much of an impact, but when he's on the field, he makes plays. I think his hands are a little question. Some drops where it's like you can't have that. But we saw it in the spring game, made a big catch here and there. Khalil Jackson, I know Gators fans have a weird hatred for him. The guy was a walk-on who had a serious impact. Most people love the cool walk-on stories. People really don't like him for some reason. I think he can have I don't think it's going to be a big impact. I don't think it's going to be a big role, but I think he'll play. I think on another Power 4 roster, he could be a starter. If you want to get into that argument, it depends on, what type of roster we're talking about here. But I think he can play. And then I'm huge on Davion Gross, the freshman now.
Yes.
A freshman in a really deep wide receiver room. I don't know how much he's going to impact in year one, but I'm super excited for him. Justin Williams and Marquez Daniel are also really talented. So that's just a long, long list of guys that I think can produce. I think, obviously, Eric Singleton, VB3, and Dallas Wilson are going to be your starting guys. But Florida has, I think, outside of the Florida phase, kind of nationally, there's a weird misconnect where people think it's just Eric Singleton and then VB3 in Dallas. You're kind of expecting them to break out, and there's no one else. There's a ton of talent in Florida's wide receiver room. And I think Micah Mays and Bailey Stockton make that 5 deep arguably the best in the conference, if not the nation. I don't think it's the best in the nation, but I think they have a real top 10, top 5 argument there, and I'm really excited. Especially Eric Singleton. I can't talk enough about how misused he was at Auburn, and now with Buster Faulkner in another year, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if this guy goes for 1K yards, right? Like, if everything goes right, I would not be surprised at all.
Who do you expect to be part of the kickoff return team? I would shy away from BB3 being part of it because he's going to be one of the starters. But who knows? BB3 has turned into a leader ever since DJ Lagway went to Baylor. And I would go out on a limb to say he might be the next Gator wide receiver superstar. Who do you think is going to do kickoff returns?
Yeah, I think Florida has a lot of good options there. Like you said, I think we'll see VB3 on punt returns a lot. Kick returns, you don't really want them going out there and getting blown up in a way. You know your guy's going to get blown up on a kick return, right? But I think we have a lot of really talented returners. I think a guy that's kind of slept on is Jalen Lloyd. I mean, that guy got burners, right? Like, you added him to the roster for a reason. I don't think he's going to have a huge impact in the wide receiver room because they have a lot of really good wide receivers, but I do think he might return some kicks. I think the running back room has a couple guys. London Montgomery had some really good returns at ECU. I would not be surprised to see him. But yeah, I think there's a ton of guys in that room. I think fall we might be able to see a little more. And I honestly, there's about 5 or 6 names where I wouldn't be surprised if they're out there week 1, to the point where I'm not really comfortable with who's going to be the guy, right? But I think we're going to be in good hands either way. And then punt return, I think VB3 is out there. I think he's one of the best returners. At least last year was one of the best returners in the nation. Didn't have the touchdown, didn't have the production, but he added some really, going back to that USF game, right? Changed the momentum completely with a huge return, brought us, it looked like it was like being in the stadium, it was kind of like a sigh of relief, like, oh, VB3 just got us this crazy return. Like, finally, we're gonna put these guys away and we're gonna stop being so rusty and so bad out here, right? But it didn't happen, obviously. But he's a really good punt returner, and yeah, I think we got a ton of guys that could be really good.
Your thoughts? I'm going to ask you these questions because I see the negativity again within the fan base. A lot of people saying we're going to lose. We're going to lose to Texas. We're going to automatically lose to Georgia. To me, in my opinion, we beat Texas last year. Georgia's not the same Georgia. We're going to lose to Oklahoma. I'll give you. We could possibly lose one of those three, but I don't think we're going to lose all three.
Hmm.
So, your thoughts on the fan base thinking we're losing to Texas just because it's in Texas and because we beat them last year? Your thoughts on us losing to Oklahoma, hypothetically speaking, and losing to Georgia because it's Georgia automatically, and we haven't beat them in 15 freaking. I'm just making up numbers. I don't know how long it's been, but it's been a long time that we've beaten Georgia on a consistent basis.
Yeah, I think that's the fun part of college football, right? Is like we all get together at this time in the year and we make our schedule predictions and we put W's next to where we think it's going to win and L's next to where we think it's going to lose. And all of them are almost always wrong, right? And it's never the games you expect to be wins that are wins and never the games you expect to be losses that are losses. And so that's why I'm really excited for this year because we don't with Jon Sumrall, obviously we haven't seen him coach at this level yet. We haven't seen him coach with this level of players and going even into a Buster Faulkner, right? We love Buster Faulkner. We think Buster Faulkner is one of the best OCs in the country, and I think he is too. But at the same time, he hasn't really coached the talent that we have at Florida, right? He's coached in in
Exactly.
a in a power
And
conference, right?
if he did
ACC.
chicken salad with Georgia Tech, what can he do with the Florida talent?
Yeah, I think that's kind of an overlooked thing too. A lot of people like to worry about our quarterback room. And I think it's a little revisionist history where people act like Haynes King was always this phenomenal quarterback. Even with Buster Faulkner, he was a great player, a great college football quarterback. Don't get me wrong, but it wasn't like he was carrying Buster Faulkner. I think Buster Faulkner made him a lot better of a quarterback than he was. So yeah, I think what's so exciting about this year is we're gonna see these coaches have you know the amount of talent they've never seen before, they've never used before. We're going to see if they're really the type of coaches we expect them to be, and I think we see that. So going just to those specific games, I think it's hard with Texas and Georgia. I think they're two of the best rosters in the country. I think Georgia's always going to be. Unfortunately, it pains me to say this, but Georgia's always going to be good, right? But they have their question marks, and I think Texas, you know, last year was the same thing. Oh, Texas has one of the best rosters, if not the best roster in the country. Like Texas is going to be amazing, and you saw that they weren't that way. Now they finished the year pretty strong, but I think those two games are going to be difficult. But I also think that maybe at the end of the year we'll be laughing about like, wow, we thought these games were going to be hard, and it ended up completely different. Like they didn't have the seasons they thought they were going to have. Um, I think out of those three games, I think Oklahoma is definitely the most winnable. Just looking at it on paper, and I say that as a huge Oklahoma guy this year, not as in I'm cheering for them because they're in the SEC. I want the Florida Gators to win the SEC,
Of
but
course.
I think that Oklahoma is going to be really good. I think John Mateer. A lot of people don't like John Mateer because he looked really bad after an injury that was supposed to be season ending, and he was out there, no one really thought he was going to be out there. He was out there. I think a lot of people kind of sleeping on him this year. That being said, the Florida Gators are going to upset a team at home that no one expects. We've seen it year after year after year. We saw it under Billy Napier where, we question, looking back on it, we really question him as a head football coach. The statistics tell us he wasn't a very good head football coach at the University of Florida, and he got it done against Texas. He got it done against Utah in week 1 with Anthony Richardson. He had a couple of those big games. I think Oklahoma might be that game if I just had to pick one, where the Swamp really just affects the team, rattles the team, and we get out of there. But I do think this team is talented enough where I would not be surprised if Florida is really competing with those guys, really pushing them, and they could win 2 out of 3. In a crazy world, 3 out of 3. I don't expect that, but they could win 2 out of 3. They could win 1 out of 3, or they could get swept. I think that's college football. Really, I know it's not really the exciting answer where I'm like, yeah, they're gonna win all 3, and we're going undefeated, right? But I think it's really exciting. It's really fun to look at, and I think as much as it's like annoying in a way where it's like, oh, look at Miami's schedule. Miami gets to play a bunch of ACC bottom feeders. Their toughest game is Notre Dame and then no one else, and FSU and all these guys, right? And then we have to go out here and play a pretty tough schedule where we got really good football teams. But at the same time, I mean, are we going to have fun watching us play NC State and Virginia and all those guys every week? No, we're going to have fun watching Texas, and we're going to be in Texas, cheering our butts off, hoping it's a good game. We're going to have fun watching Oklahoma come to town. I think that's what makes the SEC so great is every week there's going to be, a really exciting matchup. And yeah, I do think that those games are going to be tough. Probably if I had to pick the 3 toughest, those are going to be them. But at the same time, there's a possibility for sure that Florida wins that Oklahoma game. And, if the season goes the way I think there's a potential to go, then Florida can win two of those 3. I wouldn't be surprised.
And another one I'm going to ask you about. People are saying we're going to lose to Missouri.
Yeah, that one, I don't really subscribe to that, right? I think Austin Simmons is a good quarterback. Obviously would have loved him to stick at the University of Florida when we had that commitment, right?
Of course.
And I think they brought in some good things. I think Drinkowitz is a solid coach, but talent wise, I don't think they have a more talented roster than us. And then are you telling me that Drinkowitz is that much better of a coach than Jon Sumrall? Are you telling me that we can't win that game? I think that game is arguably, I think we'll be favorites in that game. Obviously, it depends on how the start of the season goes.
I've been saying that, guys. The second person that believes we're going to be favorites.
Yeah, I think we should be, and this has bit me in the butt because last year I was like, man, we're so talented. Like, we're definitely beating this team. We're more talented than them. But I also think that with not be confident in the coaching hires that we made, in the coaching in general, and yeah, I think we're gonna head into that weekend favorites, and I think we should win that game for sure.
I know we're gonna do week 0 and do all the schedule and all the pick'ems, but who do you have as your defensive player of the year or defensive players of the year and offensive players of the year?
We talking just Gators, right?
Yes, just Gators.
Breakouts. Got you.
Breakout.
Yeah, I think. How many you want me to give? Just one?
One of each side.
Okay, so defense.
Or if you want to do 2 of each side, it's up to you.
I'll do 2. Okay. I'll do 2. You know me. I got names.
Yeah, I know. We got a bunch. I know. We vibe. So.
Yeah, but I'll give you 2 on the defensive side of the ball. I actually just dropped an article today where I included both these guys. I think Jeremiah McLeod is my number 1 breakout. I'm really high on Jeremiah McLeod. I watched the tape last year, and he just moves different for a defensive lineman. I mentioned it. I think Brendan Bett is going to be the leader in the defensive interior, right? Brendan Bett's the guy we're going to lean on. He's probably going to play the most snaps. But I think if anyone's going to replace Caleb Banks, replace, one of those special defensive linemen where it's like, this guy's a game changer, I think it's going to be Jeremiah McLeod. He moves different, really athletic for his size, has, potential to be a good pass rusher, in my opinion. So I'm really high on him. Had a huge spring. Everyone I talked to was like, yeah, Jeremiah McLeod looked really good. Even in the scrimmages that we were allowed to see, looked really good. And then the other guy is Ben Hanks. this might be more mainstream because Ben Hanks had another really good spring. Everyone was talking about Ben Hanks, but we got to remember this guy was borderline 5-star kid, broke the Miami Country Day interception record, was a ball hawk, incredible cornerback in college or in high school, sorry, and year had a couple interceptions and scrimmages. Looked really good. He's pushing for a starting cornerback spot, regardless of what happens with Dijon Johnson. I think Dijon Johnson's injury opens it up even more for him. But I think before that, Ben Hanks might have earned that second starting spot over. And I'm a huge Cormani McClain guy. I think Cormani McClain can be a first-round NFL pick. Like if he puts it together. But Ben Hanks was pushing for that spot, right? I think Ben Hanks has the potential to be not just a breakout player, but like a star on defense, like a guy where it's like, this guy's going to be a first-round pick. This guy's going to be – we're going to remember Ben Hanks for a long time, right? And a little bit to do with the legacy factor of that and everything. But he's just a playmaker, ball hawk, really exciting guy, a really fun watch. So those are my two on defense. On offense – now, this is tough because we're thinking about true breakout. Like, if I had to pick a guy who I think is going to exceed expectations, Eric Singleton. I think Eric Singleton's going to be, phenomenal in this offense. But just talking true breakout guys, I think I'm going to have to go with a really niche one here is Luke Harpring. I think the tight end. I think the tight end position is pretty big question mark heading into fall. Lakota Dupree, Luke Harpring, Amir Jackson, who's kind of going to take the control there. And I think it might be Luke Harpring. Really talented player, really strong athlete, can move. His father was an 10-year NBA vet you see that athleticism from his father. Like he can move. He has a high upside as a receiver. I think Luke Harpring might be a breakout guy where we're kind of like, we don't expect the tight end to really do anything. And I think Luke Harpring or Lakota Dupree or Amir Jackson can have a good year. I think it might be Luke Harpring. I think he might be the starting tight end. I'm excited to see him. Another guy, Duke Clark is another guy that I'm excited about, but I'm not going to say him just yet. I think next year is when you're going to hear me hyping up Duke Clark. I think once Jaden Ball is drafted, I think Duke Clark, it might be Duke Clark's time. But Aaron Philo, this one might rile some people up because I know we're still talking quarterback controversy, right? But I think if Aaron Philo wins the job, I expect him to. I think Aaron Philo can have a really good year and be a breakout player. I think people are sleeping on just how exciting Aaron Philo is to watch. I think people kind of fall into like this, he's a game manager, like a Kirk Cousins of the NFL, where it's like he's going to say hike and he's going to throw it to his guy. And he's really good at that. Don't get me wrong, but out of structure, like Aaron Philo can make some really fun throws. Kind of a gunslinger. We complain about the interceptions. That's because he's a gunslinger. Buster Faulkner said it himself, like he's going to throw interceptions, but he's going to bounce back and he's going to make some really good throws after that. So, yeah, I think he's a guy that if he does win the job, I think he might surprise some people. He might have a really good year. I mean, I think it kind of goes back to Florida fans are pretty spoiled, and not in a bad way. I love Florida fans. Like, you guys are the best. But at the same time, we look at a guy like Aaron Philo and we're like, oh, like, this is all we could get out of the portal. Like, we should have got this guy and this guy. Like, we could have got way better than this. Georgia Tech was so excited about Aaron Philo. Georgia Tech was, ecstatic about him being their starting quarterback. Whenever he got playing time, the Georgia Tech fans were super excited. There's a reason Georgia Tech fans were so mad when he transferred away. Buster Faulkner was excited. He was the all-time Georgia passing leader in high school. And he flashed a lot when he played. I mean, I made the 40-minute cut-up of every snap he's taken in college football. And there's a ton of plays that you can pull from that and be like, this is a nice play. Like, this is a cool play. And just in the little snaps he's played, he's done that. So I think people are kind of sleeping on how exciting of a quarterback he could be. I actually made a cut up. I'm probably gonna post it on Twitter tomorrow of just his
Okay.
out of structure stuff, where some really exciting throws where he's breaking the pocket, making throws on the run, looking really good. So, I think when we talk about this quarterback room, a lot of people tend to say like Trammell has the high ceiling, Aaron Philo's the high floor guy, where it's like you know what you're getting. And I do agree that Trammell has a higher ceiling just because that guy's got a rocket of an arm, crazy skill on the ball. But at the
Yep.
same time, I think people are sleeping on Aaron Philo's true high potential. I think this guy can be not he could be an NFL quarterback, and I think people are sleeping on that a little bit.
And I love TJ, and I've always wanted TJ to be the starter. But I also defend Aaron Philo because Buster Faulkner has been recruiting that kid from high school. So, and I have a source which I can't name. There's rumors that coach wanted Darian Mensa to become a Gator, but and it's not rumors. If you read between the lines of what the source told me, which I'm not going to mention, he wanted Darian Mensa to be a Gator. He just got hired too late, and University of Miami threw a bag at him, and now he's a Hurricane. Uh, and double A, I mean AP, sorry, is now was option B because Buster Faulkner is the OC. But I don't look at it. I don't look at AP as option B. I even said it when he was at Georgia Tech. In my opinion, he should have started over Hayes King. He was just younger. Um, so whoever we get, and if we have a two quarterback system, I'm not afraid of the two quarterback system, but the fan base is. Um, give me your. I know you don't like doing this, but give me your early prediction. Let's rile up the fan base. Your early prediction is Coach Sumrall gonna win the SEC or at least compete for a title in year one, or is Coach Sumrall Napier or Ron Zook 3.0?
Oh, that's a tough decide. I mean, I don't think I don't think I can say he's gonna win the SEC in year one. I also think he's far from the next Billy Napier, Ron Zook. I think there will be a little bit in the middle, closer hopefully to pushing for the SEC title. I think Florida to have a good year, and kind of what I'm expecting is, like you said, 8 wins is kind of the floor of like we'll leave this year and be like that was a good
Of
year.
course.
That was what we kind of expected. If he pushes it to 10, that's a phenomenal year. If he pushes it to 10, it will be lying season for everyone. I think we will be above and beyond. Like we'll be above the moon, right? But
Yeah.
I think the talent that he has, the coaching staff that he has, it's realistic to say I expect 8 or more wins. Um, does that mean if he gets 7, I'm gonna be like, wow, fire this guy, right? Like I don't think I'm gonna be saying that. It depends on how it looks too, right? I think
Yeah.
it depends on how it
Optics.
looks.
Optics, optics,
And
optics.
yeah, I think we can use that as an excuse sometimes. Like a lot of coaches love to pull the like, oh, we had the lead in all these games, or like it was a one-score game in this many games, and imagine if we changed that. Now it doesn't mean that, but I do think if you're beating the teams you're supposed to be beating, and you're losing to the teams like we mentioned, Georgia, Texas, Oklahoma, just right there, and you still have 9 wins, I think that's a phenomenal season. Even Old Miss is a team where kind of a question mark because they don't have Lane Kiffin anymore, but they
Exactly.
still
That's
have
exactly my
Trinidad,
point.
Keywan Lacey, like Deuce Alexander. We play some really tough teams. So I think I'm not gonna be out on Jon Sumrall in any terms if he doesn't win the SEC or he doesn't push us to be close to that. But at the same time, I do think there's a realistic expectation where it's like we should be getting to 8 wins. 7 is okay. 6 is and then other than that, it's kind of like panic time a little bit, but it's the first year. You gotta expect some growing pains, but I also do believe with the staff he hired, with the talent he has, this team shouldn't be a team where we're like okay with mediocre results. In a way, I think
Yes.
I will say they are definitely not to the point where this roster is going to win us a title, right? I think Jon Sumrall has been very open about the fact that he doesn't think this roster is complete. I think the trenches, like we talked about, the offensive line is definitely nowhere where they expect it to be, and we've seen that on the recruiting trail. They've really targeted offensive linemen. So yeah, I'm not gonna freak out if they don't win the SEC, if they don't win 9-10 games, but I do think that we should expect minimum 7 and go from there. But it shouldn't be a season where we look really uncompetitive considering all the talent and the coaching talent that we have.
Your thoughts on the two big whiffs? I'm going to go ahead and call them whiffs, even though recruiting is now 24/7, 365. Missing out on Brewster and missing out on the wide receiver. And now I hear rumors that they're trying to spin back on. To me, they're two big whiffs because there's a cat now in Texas that I wish he was wearing orange and blue. I got very close to him. Actually, he might be still coming on the channel, and I'm very close to him. His name is Tyler Alexander. Me and him created a bond, and I threw out a crystal ball, and he told me behind closed doors my crystal ball was not wrong, but something happened which I can't discuss. And he ended up going to Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Because of something happening. And I feel that they should go after a solid Florida kid, 4-star or 3-star, or the Texas kid at the 3 or 4-star, instead of trying to go for the cream of the crop, especially because some of these cream of the crop kids, they're just looking for the bag.
Yeah, I think there's a balance that needs to be had for sure. I'm not ever gonna fault a coach for going after the cream of the crop guys because when everything is looking like it's supposed to at the University of Florida, we're landing those guys, right? Like I don't think it's tough when you say, hey, you're supposed to be landing the number 1 wide receiver in the state of Louisiana at the University of Florida,
Exactly.
but also I think that when Florida's good, they have the ability to do that. And I think Jalen Brewster is another guy where it's like when Florida's good, that might be a guy that we're expecting to land. That being said, it was really ambitious in year 1 even to go after those guys. I think it's hard to fight against a team like Texas Tech, even a team, like LSU, where it's like, hey, listen, we just came off a 4-8 season. We're not gonna pay you probably the most out of everyone. Like we'll pay you competitively, but it's probably not gonna be like the greatest bag in the entire world. And like come here, right? It's gonna be hard to do that. And they pitched themselves pretty well for the fact that they were really in those battles. But second place, you're not gonna get a consolation prize. It's not
Exactly.
like 2 years from now if Jalen Brewster is like balling out, you're not gonna be like, oh well, we were second place
We
for him, so
tried.
like yeah, that was awesome. But I do think I want my coaching staff to be pushing for top players in the country. If they weren't pushing for them, I'd be like, all right, like we can take the 4 stars and we're gonna have a good class, but at some point I'm expecting you to get the 5-star guys. I think it's the same way. If we didn't push for Maxwell Hiller, we wouldn't have Maxwell Hiller, right? I know that's a little different because Phil Trowine has a great relationship with him, but
Well,
I
now you
really
brought up
do
to my
think
next
that
question, but
you need
go
to
ahead,
push.
finish this thought, and then we'll talk about the Maxwell Hiller because the fan base is going crazy.
Yeah. Well, just to finish my
Go
point,
ahead, go
I
ahead,
think
finish your
it's
thought.
just it's really ambitious. It's probably not the right time where you're gonna land those guys, just because you haven't proven anything on the field. Like you can say all you want. Jon Sumrall is a very convincing talker, right? Like it's very
Yeah,
easy to buy into Jon Sumrall. But at the same time, you can sit back and say Florida hasn't proven anything. Like in 2 years, am I confident that this staff is going to be, you know, still there? I mean, I am personally, but as a recruit, you don't have that promise. Whereas in Texas Tech, I mean, Texas Tech is going to go against not very good teams, right? For the next 2 years. Look at
Exactly.
their schedule this year. It is awful. They're going to win games. They're going to pay up. Even like an LSU is like the pitch is pretty simple. It was pretty clear that Florida was going after Lane Kiffin hard. It's pretty clear that they whiffed on Lane Kiffin. For whatever reason, whatever it was, they did miss out on Lane Kiffin. So now you're recruiting against them. It's hard to say like, hey, listen, come to my school. They might be paying you more. They also might have the coach that everyone in the fan base was saying that was going to be their next coach, but like, come to us because we have cool jerseys, right? Like it's a tough, and I think in a year from now, like if we talking about 9 to 10 wins, if we get that 9 to 10 win mark and it's really competitive football, we might be able to land those guys. I think even I hate to use Miami as like a positive thing, but look at Miami. I think Miami hasn't really even had the success they want you to believe. Like, biggest thing was making a crazy run last year in the college football playoffs when they almost missed the college football playoff completely. They made a great run, and now look at the success they're having on the trail. I mean, 5-star after 5-star, just landed one of the best players in the entire country. So I think you look at it as if you can build momentum, then the fact that we were second place for these guys with little to no momentum, like little to no proof of concept, once we get that proof of concept, I think these guys start becoming guys that we're really going to land, and it's really worth, going after. But I will say it was a little, it was a little, it was a great process trying to go after those guys, but it was very advantageous. Like it was a very good thought, but I don't know how much of a serious shot we had. But you want your coach to go after those guys, so I'm never gonna, take marks against them for that.
Your thoughts? The fan base is going nuts because somebody that's currently Gator commit is visiting Tennessee and LSU. Should the fan base be in an uproar? Is Maxwell Hiller about to be an LSU Tiger because Lane Kiffin and Coach Sumrall are in LSU?
Yeah, I think recruiting is made to give people panic attacks. Really, that's about it. That's all it's good for, right? So, listen, recruiting is a crazy thing. We've seen so many things happen. I can sit here and say, I can have a kid text me like, "Hey, I'm a Florida Gator. I can't wait to be there. My mom bought a house there." 2 weeks from now, they could be flipped somewhere else, right? Like that's the reality of recruiting
Exactly.
nowadays. But at the same time, Maxwell Hiller has done nothing to show that he's not going to be a Gator. He has a great relationship with Phil Troutwine. He's still actively recruiting for the Florida Gators. As much as we want to freak out about stuff like that, and even as much, I don't even know if he's going to take those visits. I don't think those are set in stone yet. I don't think those are like guaranteed to happen. Even if
He
he
might take
does,
it because he wants to go watch a football game for free.
exactly. Like this is a kid, this is a high school guy who's never going to be, I mean, hopefully is never going to be recruited again. Might hit the portal. That's a completely different story, but never going to have this recruiting process again. Why not go take some visits? If you want to be a Disney Gator, go take some visits and also tell the other recruits there, like, hey, Florida's got it going on. Like, you got to get down to Florida, right? Like, if you want to look at it that way. But at the end of the day, never gonna fault a kid for taking visits. The recruiting process is crazy, and I got to give a shout out to my guy King Shad. I don't know if you saw this on Twitter, Carlos, but King Shad, Maxwell Hiller responded to King Shad on Instagram and with "I'm all Gators," I think is what he said, basically saying like,
No, I
"Don't
didn't
worry
see it
about
on
these
Twitter,
visits."
and I follow
Yeah,
King Shot, so that's weird.
he responded on Instagram to King Shot and basically said like, "I'm locked in." So listen, King Shot is the real man on the inside. That's my guy, and he did his work. So faith in King Shot. It looks like Maxwell Hiller's you can calm down a little bit. And I think, like I said, at the end of the day, recruiting's recruiting. You never know what's going to happen. We've seen that time and time again. But at the same time, this kid's just going through his process. He's one of the most sought after prospects in the entire country. Why not take advantage of that? Even if at the end he's likely to turn to be a Gator. I mean, he's committed to the Florida Gators, has a great relationship with all the coaches, but take your process. It's never going to happen again, so might as well take advantage.
Your thoughts on one of my favorite recruits, now an official Gator, originally for the class of 2027, reclassified yesterday. He was on the show earlier in the year with me. Awesome kid, already graduated from high school. Plus, he's not eligible to play out high school ball because he's 19. And I'm talking about the wonderful big man that has only 2 years of high school of football, Mr. Stevie Bentley. Your thoughts of him now reclassifying to 2026? People are calling him a project. I don't consider him a project. I think that kid's going to be a beast. And I told him that while on the show. I think he'll be a number one draft pick, round one pick by the time he's done at University of Florida. Is that a big get for University of Florida for him to reclassify to 2026?
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen a lot of naysayers online about it, like, oh, this kid's is a project. Now he's reclassing, like that's even worse. This and that. Oh, three, whatever. Florida, I tweeted about it. Florida staff genuinely thinks this guy has NFL potential. That's what the recruiting process was like. They told him, like, listen, you come here, we'll develop you into an NFL draft pick. And I mean, I don't something saying he doesn't. I don't really understand where the negativity around him comes
I
from.
don't
I mean,
understand
the
it either.
kid's been
That's why
playing
I asked you
football,
the
like you
question.
said, yeah, he's barely been playing football, very new to the game of football, and absolutely phenomenal athlete. I mean, I posted about it way back when he was playing. He was the punter for his football team at his crazy weight. The defensive lineman was punting the football.
Yeah, he
He
was.
also ran a fake punt. Like, they were confident enough in him to run a fake punt. Like, that's athleticism I've never seen at the position personally. I think, you watch his soccer clips and it's like, this guy's footwork is crazy. Footwork is a big
Exactly.
part of being a defensive lineman. That gets
Yes.
me excited. You watch the practice tape. There's not a lot of game tape. Obviously, he's only been playing football for a couple of years, but
Of course.
he's really good. And then the other thing I actually have to address, someone's commented and said, like, enough with these foreign defensive linemen or foreign trench players. Emmanuel Oyembedejo, again, messed it up.
Yeah,
We'll
I
call him
understood.
Big O.
Big O.
Big O he's from London. They connected on their visits. Big O and Steve connected on the visits, talked a lot about it. Both have very similar backgrounds. I'm expecting big things from Big O this year. He showcased it at Jack State. Now, Jack State is a little different competition, but he looked really good at Jack State. It transferred over, like, the athleticism. I think Steve, I always call him Steve, but it's Steve.
It's
I think
Steve Bentley.
Steve, yeah,
I called him Steve once and he
the
corrected me.
same traits. Yeah, I used to call him Steve all the time, but I know it's wrong. But I think he has NFL traits. I think Gerald Chapman has done it once and once again, has developed these guys. We forget that Caleb Banks, coming over from Louisville, was not a very, very good football player, was not a huge get. I mean, I'm not calling him a bad football player, but it wasn't like, oh, Florida got their next first round pick in the transfer portal. It was kind of like, oh, Caleb Banks, like a developmental guy, like a raw prospect, like Bentley is. But he came over, developed him into a first round pick. Cam Jackson, same way. I know Gerald Chapman didn't have too much with Cam Jackson, but these guys at the defensive tackle position, if you wanted great defensive tackle, it's going to be hard to find a guy who has that athleticism and is already super polished. And when it is a guy like that, it's probably Jalen Brewster, right? Who we're just talking about, really was untouchable. Everyone was going after him. Bags were being dropped. Bentley is a very cheap version of that. And obviously he's going to take a lot of development. But at the same time, Jeremiah McLeod, I just mentioned him as a breakout player. He played a lot of snaps last year, and the same thing out of high school for
Yeah.
him was kind of like, this guy's a developmental guy. This guy's a raw guy. Ended up playing almost 200 snaps last year, flashed a bunch. I think, this kid obviously getting on campus a year early is, in my opinion, awesome for him. I think being under Gerald Chapman, working out with Florida, getting in that D1 facility. I talked to Davin Davidson, who is another one where they kind of mention him as a raw prospect, right? I talked to his quarterback coach, and he mentioned that getting in the building at Florida, getting with D1 weight conditioning, getting with D1 coaches, it is such an advantage, right? Like, these guys are getting paid the big bucks to train these guys and develop these guys. It's such an advantage. And for Bentley to be able to do that and to be able to get on campus early as one of those raw guys who needs to be developed a little bit, I think that's huge for his development. And I think, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, if this guy's balling out and making a serious impact, I'm not going to be surprised at all. I think he has the potential to be an NFL draft pick. Like you said, I mean, first round, I could see it, right? Like Caleb Banks. I don't think anyone was
Yeah.
expecting Caleb
Yep.
Banks to be a first round pick at his time in this process. So
Yep.
I'm really excited about him. I think the sky's the limit for him. A really unique prospect. And I think people don't like unique prospects. They like slam dunk prospects. But in recruiting, there's no slam dunk prospects, right? Like, we see 5 stars flame out all the time. We see 0 stars ball out all the time. Like,
Yeah.
Mally,
Exactly.
one of the best players in college football last year was Malachi Tony, 3-star, obviously a reclass as well. But I do think that he has the potential to be a really good football player. And I think the negativity around him is more of just like, I'm uncertain of how this is going to work. I've never seen it work before that way. So I'm just going to say it's safer to say it's not going to happen. When in reality, like, this kind of the limit of this kid. And I think there's a true, situation where he's a really good football player.
I gotta remind Gator Nation, the best running back in the country right now, when he came to college, was a 3-star.
Mm-hmm.
There's a kid out of Texas, Gator Nation. Listen to me now. We should get this kid on board. He should become a Gator. His name is Sidney Hubbard. He's straight out of Texas. He was on the channel earlier. He's currently a 3-star, or was rated a 3-star. That kid, by the time his recruitment's over, is either going to be a 4 or 5-star. One last question, and then don't leave, Dylan, because I have to ask you some questions or ask you 2 things off air.
Gotcha.
So don't leave. Your thoughts on the? I know the fan base is going to hate me for this question, but I got to put it out there because it happened a couple weeks ago. Your thoughts on DJ Lagway coming out several weeks ago and saying he was hurt?
Yeah, I think, we all kind of knew it, right? Like, it wasn't anything we didn't know. I think it's always going to be an ugly situation when you have a kid who didn't reach his potential, and the fan base completely bought into him, completely, made him into this hero. So no one was going to win in that situation. It's easy to take shots at a kid that was at the school and didn't pan out, right? But at the end of the day, I think the separation was good for both parties. I think it was mutual separation as well. I don't think it was, a lot of people like to throw it out there like, oh, one party wanted this and one party wanted that, blah, blah. I think, it was a pretty respectful departure. I don't think there's any bad blood. And that staff that really had those problems are not here anymore, right? Like, we look at DJ Lagway, and there's a lot to be said about what happened with him, whether it was the way he handled it, whether the way Billy Napier and his staff handled it. Either way, they're both gone from the University of Florida. I think we can, especially, I mentioned it earlier, we can cheer for him week 1, right? Like, we want Baylor to beat Auburn, and that makes our game against Auburn a little easier, I think, a little, we have a little more confidence, right? I think Florida fans are going to be upset. I was in college when DJ Lagway was a freshman, and I was a senior, and like, I'm not going to say that I wasn't in the crowd chanting like we want DJ, right? Like I wasn't in the crowd like texting my buddies like, wow, we got the next great, football player at the University of Florida. And we all got a little heartbroken when it didn't work out. Good kid, a really good kid. Interviewing him, you could just tell he was a good kid. But at the end of the day, it's in the past now. There was a lot of factors that went into that not working out, as in, there was a lot of factors that went into the entire staff not working out. So it's a difficult thing. Clearly, we understood he was injured. I think that was handled all types of wrong on both sides. It's easy to say the staff ruined him, and it's easy for him. Easy for him to say the staff ruined him, and it's easy for the staff to say like, "Hey, it was your fault. Like you should have handled this better." At the end of the day, it happened. Negative situation, but we move on, and hopefully he has a great year at Baylor if he's not playing the University of Florida, right?
Yes. Guys, where can they find your work, Dylan? And then I'll do the outro, and then we'll talk off air. But where can they find your work? You. Where can they find all your social media? Go ahead and even throw out your YouTube, because I do follow your YouTube too.
I appreciate that. Yeah, find my work at Gators on SI. Search up, if you want just my work, search up Dylan Olive, Gators on SI. If you want my coworker Cam Parker, who we don't have to look at his work, right? Like my work's a lot better clearly, but you can go check out his work. Kyle Lander does great photos. Go check out his work as well. Yeah, you can see above me is my Twitter. I'm posting cut-ups that I'm making. I'm posting articles. Just posted an article today about 5 players that could break out this year. We talked a little bit about it, but go check that out. And then my YouTube is, I'm starting up a YouTube. I don't have as much success as Carlos here. I'm following in his footsteps a little, but you guys can go check that out. I think it's the same as my Twitter, but I appreciate you for having me, Carlos, and we'll have a lot of fun this year covering some Florida Gators, hopefully.
Guys, we'll be back week 0. Sometime week 0. I work around his schedule because he's been gracious enough to be a part of the SwampCast, and this is season 2. So we'll be back for week 0, and we'll talk to you soon. And like always, stay positive, stay on your grind, and go Gators. Peace. Buddy, is there